Did you know that hitting $200,000 invested actually means you're already about halfway to $1 million? At first glance, that sounds ridiculous. How can $200,000 possibly be halfway to $1 million when it's literally only 20% of the total? That's the trick. And once you see the math, it becomes obvious why it's the halfway point. Let's take a simple, realistic example. You start from zero, invest $110 per week, the cost of an impulse purchase on Amazon, a cigarette smoking habit, or a night out at the bar, and earn a long-term 7% inflation-adjusted return. No gimmicks, no get-rich-quick, no crazy income assumptions, just consistency. Now watch what happens. The first few years are what everyone quietly calls the slow grind, the part nobody brags about because it feels painfully uneventful. With your steady $110 per week and a 7% return, you don't crack six figures until around year 12, when your balance finally reaches $100,000. During this stretch, it feels like you're doing almost all the heavy lifting, and that's because you are. You've put in a little over $68,000 of your own money, while the market has contributed only about $34,000 in growth. Your investments are technically compounding, but it still feels like they're taking baby steps and wobbling around rather than sprinting. This phase is the financial equivalent of pushing a boulder uphill with no end in sight. You pass a sign on the trail indicating that the summit is approaching and you're headed in the right direction. You're showing up, you're being consistent, and the progress is real. But it's slow, stubborn, and often discouraging. There's no big jump, no wow moment, no visual proof that the future payoff is going to be worth it. Anyone who makes it through this part deserves a medal, because staying committed for more than a decade with such modest results is genuinely hard. But here's the upside. Once you clear this stretch, you've survived the toughest part of the journey. Most people quit before compounding even has a chance to get going. If you're still in the game at this point, you've already beaten the hardest level. Once you've made consistent investing a part of who you are and have been in the game for over a decade, something noticeable starts happening in the background of your account. It's subtle at first, but then you realize your portfolio is finally starting to carry real weight. With that same steady $110 per week, your balance climbs to about $200,000 around year 18. That's a double from just 6 years earlier. Remember how long it took you to get to $100,000? Twice as long as it took to get from $100,000 to $200,000. And when you break down the numbers, the story changes dramatically. Your contributions total roughly $105,000, while your investment growth has surged to about $95,000. For the first time, your money isn't just tagging along, it's nearly keeping pace with you. This is a major turning point, the moment when compounding stops being a concept and starts being a partner. You're still making your weekly deposits, but now your portfolio is working right beside you, matching your effort almost dollar for dollar. It's almost like you have a clone out there matching your weekly savings. And here's the part that surprises nearly everyone. Hitting $200,000 invested means you're about halfway to $1 million, not in terms of dollar distance, but in terms of time. At $200,000, your money starts compounding so rapidly, it's like working overtime without asking for a single extra dollar from you. Keep investing the same amount with the same 7% real return, and around year 38, you cross that $1 million mark. Here's what's amazing. By this point, you've contributed roughly $220,000 total. The rest, more than $780,000, came from your money making money. You're no longer the engine, you're just the person adding fuel. The machine runs itself. So it took roughly 18 years to reach $200,000, a long haul with modest results. But fast forward to year 38 and your portfolio has grown to $1 million. It still requires patience, but the difference in growth is night and day. So while $200,000 is technically just under halfway to $1 million, it's remarkably close. But things get even better from here. With a $1 million portfolio, the numbers start getting almost ridiculous in a good way. At that size, you're looking at roughly $100,000 in annual growth before inflation, or around $70,000 after adjusting for inflation. And remember, that's without lifting a finger. No overtime, no side hustle, no selling anything. Just your money quietly multiplying in the background. And because this entire example uses a 7% inflation-adjusted return, those gains translate to the same buying power you'd have today, which makes the growth feel even more real. What's even more mind-bending is what happens if you stop contributing entirely. Let's say you hit your $1 million mark and decide, okay, I'm done adding new money. Even then, that nest egg would double to about $2 million in just a little over 7 years, again with zero additional deposits. Your portfolio becomes a self-propelling machine. Once it reaches a certain size, compounding stops feeling like slow, steady growth and starts acting like a snowball racing downhill, gaining speed and mass with every turn. It grows so quickly and powerfully that trying to slow it down would be downright foolish, if not almost impossible. And this is exactly why $200,000 is the real halfway point to $1 million. It's not about the dollar amount, it's about the timeline and the effort required. The long, frustrating grind happens during a climb to that $100,000 and $200,000 mark. The first 100K is painfully slow, the second 100K is noticeably faster, every 100K after that happens faster and faster, it's almost hard to comprehend. People tend to quit during the early years, right before the momentum shifts. They get discouraged by the lack of visible progress because they don't understand how the math works. But once you hit that $200,000 milestone, you've unlocked the part of compounding where your money starts behaving like a second income stream that never sleeps, never takes days off, and never asks for a raise. And you did all of this with nothing more than the cost of one dinner out per week. Another thing people often don't realize is just how exhilarating it feels once your portfolio starts gaining real momentum. In the early years, it's easy to get discouraged, but once compounding starts kicking in and your account begins to grow noticeably, everything changes. You're actively looking for ways to feed the fire. A little extra contribution here, redirecting a bonus there, tweaking your budget to give your investments more fuel. It used to feel like a chore or sacrifice, but it now starts to feel exciting. Adding to your contributions becomes less about discipline and more about opportunity, because every dollar goes to work almost instantly. If you get a surge in motivation like most people, you're going to hit $1 million much faster than in this example. And just to be clear, this only applies when you actually have $200,000 invested in assets that compound. A net worth of $200,000 spread across home equity, cars, furniture, electronics, and other slow-moving or depreciating items doesn't create the same effect. The acceleration happens when the money is in assets that historically grow faster than inflation. The S&P 500, for example, has returned roughly 10% per year over the long term, about 7% after adjusting for inflation. So everything in this explanation is based on real historical performance, not pie-in-the-sky ideas. And for anyone who claims this path takes way too long, it's worth stepping back and asking a simple question. What are you really giving up to end up with $1 million? You're not sleeping in your car, swearing off every vacation, or resigning yourself to a lifetime of eating noodles. You don't have to live like a hermit or endure financial misery. All you're doing is being a little more deliberate with your choices, cutting back on things you don't really care about and redirecting a small slice of your income towards your future self. The trade-off is tiny compared to the reward. $1 million isn't created through suffering. It's built through consistency, patience, and a handful of small choices repeated week after week. This example works precisely because it's realistic for an ordinary person earning an ordinary income. You don't have to optimize every dollar or make radical sacrifices. You just have to stick with a simple plan long enough for compounding to kick in. And if you did want to speed things up, even doubling your contributions to $220 per week would shrink the timeline dramatically. Instead of taking 38 years, you'd hit $1 million in about 29 years, nearly a decade faster without doing anything extreme. Just a slightly bigger snowball rolling down the same hill. Triple your contribution to $330 per week, which is about 20% of the average household income, and you're there in 24 years. And the truth is, your contributions usually get easier over time. Not just because you're building motivation, but as your income increases with inflation, promotions, job changes, or simply gaining more experience, that amount that once felt like a stretch becomes comfortable. Then adding an extra $20 here or $50 there doesn't disrupt your life, it slides in without much thought. Most people don't even notice their cost of living raises, but if you redirect just a slice of that upward income drift into your investments, your progress accelerates dramatically. You're not grinding harder, you're simply letting time, income growth, and discipline compound together. So reaching $200,000 invested, it's not just 20% of the way to $1 million. You've already done the hardest part, and now you're about halfway there. From this point forward, compounding takes the lead, and your money starts doing the hard work, accelerating your path to that first $1 million.